Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, thadies and gentle thems. My name is Gregory Crafts, and I am a member of your Dungeon Mastermind Roundtable for this evening. I'm here with the lovely Mahria. Mahria is one of my fellow GMs.
Hello.
How are you, darling?
Hello. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. This is kind of cool. This is our first Mastermind Roundtable.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be.
We get to start this thing.
We get to
That's
start
cool.
this thing, which means we have no idea what we're doing, and we have no idea what's going to happen. But I'm
It's
pretty.
fine.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I think that this is fun and interesting and different. But the idea behind Mastermind Roundtable, and I'm sorry, I'm just setting up the chat on my phone, which is why I have to wait.
Oh, no worries.
I have to wait for the stream to launch before it'll allow me to actually open up the chat room. But if you are watching online, I have this currently broadcasting to 7 different accounts on 5 different platforms, I think. We would love to have you guys join us in the chat and chat with us as we talk about today's topic. Because yes, the name of the series, as we mentioned, is the Masterminds Roundtable. And the concept behind this new series that we are piloting today is that a couple of members of the Mastermind GM for Hire crew are going to sit and talk about topics related to gaming. And today's topic, actually, Mahria, you want to do the intro on today's topic?
Yeah, so today's topic is all about social interactions in D&D, and we're going to be taking a look at the actual rules for it, because there are actually rules for it within the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Wait, what?
There's the rules for social interactions in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
I normally
Yeah.
but I mean,
There's rules for it.
yeah, but you take your D20 and like if they want to scare the town guard into letting them through, you just roll the intimidate check, right? And that's and if
Well, kinda. So, according to the rules, I'll bring them up right now.
Mhm.
Usually adventurers have a goal, stuff like that. However, there are certain things to resolve these interactions. For example, what is the creature or person's starting attitude? For example, if it's a friendly creature and you're trying to persuade them to let you do something, the DC that's set is going to be significantly lower than, say, if they were indifferent or hostile to you. So if you're trying to intimidate somebody who's already hostile towards you, they're already on guard. Or if you're trying to intimidate somebody who's friendly to you, you might get a slightly different reaction. So it's not just, oh, I roll a die. There are rules for it. And sometimes those rules involve rolling the dice. Well, more often that does, because there's a DC, a dice challenge. However, it can also play out with conversation, so role-playing your way into these social interactions.
Well, that actually kind of makes sense. I mean, I will be the first to admit that when I first started D&D, and pretty much any role-playing game, I'm one of those guys who never read the full manual. I kind of read, like...
Same.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the same for everybody, because it's interesting, but it's kind of dry. And it's like, oh, I'll look it up when I need it. And you see and you see on the character sheet, you see intimidate, you see persuasion, you see insight, you see performance, and it's like, okay, instinctively I know what these are. But, most of the time when GMs call for these checks, especially if you don't look at certain sections of the book, because everybody wants to know how to fight, everybody wants to know how to cast spells, everybody wants to know how magic items work, especially the magic items.
That's the fun stuff.
Exactly, that's the fun stuff. But people don't always think about social encounters. So, it's like, oh, yeah, I rolled a 12 on my intimidate. Okay, that's kind of a mediocre roll. Like, it's easy when it's a 20 or it's a 2. It's kind of easy to be like, okay, I can tell you, like, how well you succeed or fail here. But for something like a mediocre roll, it's like, what does that mean? Did you
Exactly.
just, like, is it kind of just a meh result? Like, what, and how do you set a proper DC, a target roll for the difficulty of an encounter, And when I found that there were sections of the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook that were dedicated to the social skills and creating social challenges and social encounters, it kind of blew my mind because I was like, wow, all right. Oh, and then also the insight mechanic and how that feeds into character traits.
Yep.
You know, all that, and it's like, oh my god, they put a lot of thought into this, and they put a lot of effort into this, and I think it's actually, I would venture, or I'd hazard a guess and say it's one of the more underused systems and mechanics within Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, yeah, I mean, humans typically are social creatures. We interact with each other. I mean, even through a computer screen, we're still interacting with each other.
Like right now.
But also humans can be comfortable making stuff up on the fly when they're trying to make a point. Some are not as comfortable. Everybody comes from a different background, just like you would make in D&D. And with those different backgrounds come different comfort levels in regards to how you role play, or even if you're comfortable role playing in the first place. I mean, hopefully we're playing with people that we're comfortable with, that we trust won't pick on us for doing a really lousy accent. But sometimes
or if they're your best friends, then it's okay that they make fun of you.
They're definitely going to make fun of your
They're definitely
accents.
going to, but it's okay. They're within that inner circle that it's all right because you know where their skeletons are hidden too. So
exactly, and you're going to pick on them for stuff as well. But sometimes you will be playing in an adventure league, or where you're playing with a group of strangers, and you might not be as comfortable. Or even just playing with your friends, you're just like, I never know what to say in these sites. Can't I just roll a die? That's something one of my friends usually says. No, I'm not good at these social interaction things. Can I just roll it and it succeeds or it doesn't succeed? So it all depends on a person's comfort level as well in those types of things.
Yeah, this reminds me. I didn't even tell you about this before we started because we pre-talked out the episode just a little bit, so it's a loose framework. But it's just jogging my memory now that you're saying that I actually wrote a short play, a 10-minute play about called Charisma, about a guy who tries to. There's two versions of it. There's the comedy where the guy's trying to flirt with a chick. And he just keeps rolling crap, and he doesn't want to role play it out because he's trying to gain the confidence to talk to talk to this girl and ask her out, and he keeps rolling the dice instead of actually talking, and rolls bad and rolls bad and rolls bad and rolls bad, and finally gets like a nat 20 at the kiss goodnight, and thinks he won the game. And so there's the comedy version, then there's the drama version where it's like, it's actually talking about self-worth and the tough part about trying to be comfortable enough in your skin to talk to people for real and all that. And he was using D&D as a form of therapy to try and break out of a shell. So, that was it's fascinating how, I think that kind of touches on how role-playing in general can help people gain confidence, learn how to express themselves, and things like that. But also, I like writing a lot of geek theater. So sorry, that's a complete non sequitur that had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that it was tangentially related.
Well, you mentioned that using it as a form of therapy in a therapeutic sense. And that player who has said, I'm no good in social things, can't I just roll it? He's actually started it because I play with him in a game and I run a game that he plays in. And I've noticed he's started to do a lot more talking within character. And it's starting, it's slowly happening because he's getting more comfortable being in that type of role. He's made a bard in my campaign, and I'm like, you're the talking guy. He was like, what have I done?
Funny about that. Yeah. Yeah. I rolled a 17. Tell me how awesome I am.
And part of it is, it can also be in my experience doing D&D, I can talk a pretty good game. I have a background in improv theater and stage, and I'm a musician. I'm a music teacher, so I'm used to talking to people for a living and whatnot. So if I make a character who's good at doing the talking thing, I have read the social encounters rules in the DMG only recently, but it can be so disappointing to say this fantastic like bit about trying to convince the emperor or a guard to let you do something or go somewhere, and you personally felt like you did a good job, and then you roll a natural one.
Yeah,
that can be a little disheartening for folks. So I mean, is it like some people might think, oh well, is it worth it for me to role play if the dice is just going to mess me up essentially?
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and and that can be frustrating. And I think that's the thing, is that it's incumbent upon us as dungeon masters to not sabotage the players, especially when they're doing well. So I think it's like you kind of have to stick to, okay, do we want to adjudicate everything via die rolls, or do we want to let you guys kind of freeform conversation it? And then only have die rolls for particular instances, but do it so you're not like, if somebody's role playing really well, it sucks that sometimes that they could give like that incredible speech for inspiration and then roll a 2. That's always brutal when it's like the dice are undercutting you. I mean, sometimes the dice come through and it's a big dramatic moment, like, oh my god, not only did I rock the speech, but the roll is like critical success, and you have these awesome moments. But it really sucks that sometimes you have this mechanic that, if implemented the wrong way, it can really undercut somebody's big moment, and you don't want to see that happen. And I think it's also important for dungeon masters to acknowledge who's at the table here. I'm just looking right now. We've got Paulie Knuckles here in the chat. Thank you for joining us.
That's my player. That's my bard.
Oh, that's your bard?
That's my bard.
Oh,
hey,
no.
Paul.
Well,
calling me out.
Yeah, Paulie calls you out because he said, I made a talking guy and now we're stuck in a jungle. So
you talk to some snake ladies. You've been talking to some folks.
So I think that's a hint. I think there's got to be a little bit more talk to them than stab them in the face first. So yeah. But thank you for joining us, Paulie. So glad to have you here with us today. So, and hey, if you're in the chat or if you're watching this, please drop a comment. Let us know who you are and where you're from, and please, yeah, just we'd love to have you say hello. So shout it out in the chat. Who's watching today?
Yay! I'm happy someone I know is watching.
Yeah. I gotta get better on the self-promotion on this stuff. This was like
same.
This
last minute for me.
I feel terrible, but I'm so glad that Kristen and all the other folks here at Mastermind are so good at putting that little video together and all that other stuff, getting the word out about this. So, we're so excited about this. This is a pilot program, so we're giving this a shot. I know that in 2 weeks I'm going to be back with Arthur, one of our other GMs for hire, and a couple of other GMs we're going to invite on, and we're going to be talking about how Wizards recently changed all the lore in the game and said that there are no more evil races, which I think is a awesome thing.
So
I think that
I love that.
It's storytelling opportunities abound.
Seriously,
it makes the drama so much more personal when you're not dealing with the monolith. That with monolithic races, it just adds so much gradients and intrigue and interpersonal relationships. It makes the campaigns much more personal. But that's a topic for 2 weeks from now. So I hope you will join us back on, what day is that going to be?
Oh no, that's another person I play with.
Lacan. Yeah. All right.
All right. I think there's a story
here.
Some context for this.
Yeah, no, because that's good. Read the comment, because I don't have the feed on the screen here. I got to learn how to do that.
Lacanis, I have a feeling this is my buddy Robbie. I said, I feel any social interaction can be completed by casting Contagion. Prove me wrong. Fun story. So the game I play in on Tuesdays, my character accidentally gave her name away to the Fae.
Oh no! Oh, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, so that's bad. It's some bad times. So
they have your true name. That's like having you by the short hairs for the rest of your life.
Well, it wasn't her full name. It was just like her little nickname that she'd been using like forever.
Okay.
So it wasn't her full name, but anyway, we get summoned to basically there we go. We basically get summoned to essentially get it back, because I rolled divine intervention, and it succeeded. And I was like, I want my name back.
You got that 10%?
I did. It was great.
Dude.
I think the whole party is here, Paul. Yeah. But we ended up in a party being run by some archfey named Sir Chill, and we all had to wear these masquerade masks that altered our clothes. And then he went, all right, we were all different animals. I was a unicorn, was my mask. And then he said, all right, last week I told you what the theme was, and now you have a battle to the death. Have fun. Lights go off. We all turn into the animals that we were selected, and we had to kill each other.
Oh, okay. Wow, that escalated quickly.
My character was like, I'm not killing my friends, and I have telepathy. I'm going to teleport over to this archfey to try to beat him up. Didn't work. My character got killed very quickly.
Oh, no.
But once everything got resolved, lights came back up. We were all fine. The roast carcasses of the animals that were there, everywhere. Our druid, Carrion Wardson, who is a goblin, went over and cast Contagion on the Feylord because nobody plays with me.
Oh no! Oh, that.
So we had to deal with that. He got banished. I got banished. Yeah, it was a bad time. And then the party had to do a drinking game. Well, rather, the sorcerer talked the archfey into doing a drinking contest to get both of us back.
Oh, wow.
Mostly to get our druid back. They failed the drinking game, so the druid is in Chult somewhere.
But that's an excellent example of using social interaction to further a plot, you know? Challenging you're challenging to the bad guys to a drinking game. That's one way to do it. Oh god, that's amazing. The first time I ever LARPed,
fun.
Oh, the first time I ever LARPed, it was similarly it was its own unique system, but high fantasy. Plot, lol.
It's everybody I play. It looks like it's everybody I play with on Tuesday, so that's great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Shout out to the Tuesday night crew.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, the first time I ever LARPed, it was a one day event. I showed up not knowing what to expect, but I went to high school with a couple of guys whose family, like these three brothers, they created their own LARPing system, and they ran a game in Prince William Forest in Northern Virginia, and they'd get together like once a week, or once a month, once a week, for a long weekend once a month. But they did this one day event, and I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to dip my toe into it. And I remember because they kind of like were like, Greg, you got to come and play. And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, no, you really got to do it. You're going to love it. And I'm like, okay. And then like they basically created a character for me in government class one afternoon. And they were just like filling out the sheet, and they were slipping it to me as class was going on. And they're like, all right, this is your dude. You know, we'll see you Saturday. I'm like, oh boy. So, you know, I go, and we had this scenario where the fairy kings, the fairy king and queen, blue and red, don't like each other very much. And the last time that they'd showed up, they played battle chess with the players. So they actually played like live battle chess with the players. And this time around, they said you walk into game, and they immediately called the timeout. They took my character sheet, and then they handed me somebody else's, and they said, you look like as you look right now, but this is who you're playing for today. And I was like, oh. So they did a whole Freaky Friday swap, and we spent most of the afternoon having to do in-person role-play encounters to try and figure out how to reverse the curse. And that was the puzzle. So that was a good time. Hey, Fat Bass, I see you raising your hand there. Do you have a question? Do you have anything you want to throw in, or are you just saying hey?
We shall soon find out. While we are awaiting,
yeah.
Here's my question for you, because I also LARP. Do you find that folks who do well in a LARP situation where there are plenty of social interactions tend to shy away from social interactions in Dungeons and Dragons, or excel and seek those types of things out?
You know, it's interesting. I've seen
Hi, Fat Bass.
Actors that. Sorry, I'm just giving a quick text hello. I should not get distracted like this, but you know,
it's fine.
Gotta acknowledge the chat. So glad to have so many folks jumping in here. And guys, if you have anything you want to contribute to the chat, please, we will happily read your comments and integrate you into the conversation.
I have it right here, so I'm frequently anytime it pops up, look.
I apologize that I haven't figured out how to put the chat window in the stream yet, but that's the next step in what I'm learning how to integrate as I up my streaming game. So hopefully we can do that in future episodes. But in the meantime, we are happy. We've got one eye on the chat, and we'll be happy to integrate your comments and thoughts into all this. But you know, it's really funny. I've seen actors, you know, professional actors, get into, you know, a LARP or get into a D&D session and kind of lock up and because it's the same but different. You know, I've always joked that I think I do some of my best acting when I'm LARPing, and I am a professional card-carrying member of Actors Equity and SAG-AFTRA, and you know, I'm out there doing the TV hustle out here in Los Angeles. So I'm and it's still going on even now during the pandemic. Like I'm out here working my game, but you know, I always joke that you know, I'm not a natural crier, but the one time that like 20 years ago when my girlfriend's PC perma-died at our LARP, and we had her in-game funeral, I wept openly, and it was like the most natural acting experience I'd ever had. It was intense and it was amazing, and I was like, wow, all right, so need to lock that one away for use when I need to cry on stage. Like, gotta remember that. You know, so some folks, they come to it like a duck to water, but other folks lock up. And then sometimes the most quiet and withdrawn folks in normal life put on that character and put on that persona, that presence, and they, I think it takes off the onus of being themselves and worried about how they're presenting themselves, because it's not them, they're playing this character in that moment. And then it's okay to kind of take risks and cut loose and be bold and be loud and like let out this, you know, this other character, and they shine, and it's like the most amazing and awesome thing. And then like when the session's over, they kind of go back to being like, you know, chilling in the corner. And
we just
I think
gotta really. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
finish your thought.
Yeah.
We have a good question in the chat, but go ahead and finish your.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying that, you know, it's amazing how the social contract of a role playing game. People who maybe don't have much experience with role playing, it takes a while for them to get comfortable with it. But other folks look at that and then take that as the opportunity to be. Almost like an idealized version of self in a way, you know, like it gives them permission to be loud and take up space. And I love that. I think that's great. And I've seen where folks who do it long enough find that confidence and bring it with them and carry it with them into the rest of their lives. And it makes them a, you know, bolder, more assertive, willing to take up a little bit of room and make sure their voice is heard. And I think that's like one of the great things about this. So I'm a big fan of encouraging role play as opposed to relying on dice. But I think that there are a lot of great ways, like using the system here that is talked about. Everybody should read the DMG rules on social interactions, because social interactions is really one of the 3 pillars of D&D. You know, I mean, you've got the dungeon crawling, you've got, but then you have this social aspect of being able to convince people to do things, or to be able to talk your way out of a situation, you know, especially if you've got a rogue or a bard or other face characters. I feel like that, you know, that understanding the mechanics of a good social interaction, you know, and the die rolls behind it and stuff like that would make things seem less railroady, less arbitrary, and give like reward good ideas, reward good role playing. But we can continue that in a moment, but yes, there is an excellent question in the chat here, and we should address it because I like this. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So the question is, and I think I know the person who asked this, but the chat name is Revens. Sorry, I'm messing it up. But how do you balance high emotion situations with players that have anxiety, as in big NPC is yelling at the players for something appropriate in game? So one
like,
thing,
how dare you set fire to that orphanage? You're under arrest. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially. One thing that I try to do, especially when I'm starting a campaign, starting a new game, stuff like that, if I'm running it, I make a solid effort to have a conversation with the players, whether it's individually or as a group or through a direct message. What are some things that make you uncomfortable? Because comfort level and the idea that this is supposed to be a safe place are very important to me. And that is something I actually learned from LARPing. It's all about consent, and it's all about making sure people are feeling safe. So one thing I have tried to do is have those conversations to be like, okay, well, what are some things that will make you very uncomfortable? So I personally can avoid those things, but also so we can make it known to other players, hey, that gives me icky feelings. I don't like that. Obviously there are going to be times where there are consequences, just like we mentioned before. There are consequences to your actions, whether they are positive or negative. A positive consequence might be, okay, well, you successfully flirted with the barmaid and she wants to see you after work. And if that, you don't have to go into grave detail, but like if the person is specifically uncomfortable with, you leaning in and flirting with them in character, then, I just don't do it. Same thing with yelling. I don't like yelling in particular. I feel like I can get a point across without yelling. And that's where descriptive language can come into play. Like the head of the town guard calls you in, a furrowed brow on his face as he commands that you sit down, and then you begin talking. And the PCs know that he's mad. Even if I'm not yelling, it's implied that he's going to ream them out.
Yeah, and I also think that here's the other thing. Just as a stage actor, you have the most power as a performer when you're quiet and still. Because at that point there's kind of like a gravity well of attention that focuses on you when you are the center of the room and you are quiet and still, because then it's like that's when people tend to get dangerous. Like when I'm a loud person by nature. I'm 6'5", so I'm like I take up a lot of space, and I'm a loud person. I totally acknowledge that. My buddy Brett is about 6 foot, but he's even louder than I am. But he's and we call him loudmouth.
I'm 5'10". I'm a loud lady.
Yeah. So yeah, you know what's up. But the and by the way, Kristen is in the chat now, and I wanna bring hi Kristen. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I want to talk about what she's bringing up because this is totally legit. But just to get back to this real quick, characters who yell on stage are literally throwing away their power. They actually tend to be the weakest because they take all of that power and they put it out there and they eject it all over the place, and then they're kind of rendered, limp, for lack of a better term, like powerless and not. They don't have any strength left. So and that is a character choice, and sometimes that is like appropriate for a plot or appropriate for a character to kind of have this manic explosion and give away all of their power if that's what the scene requires, But especially if you're talking about an authority figure or somebody reaming you out, I think it's much more effective if they're quieter. And it's not even so much like, sometimes depending on the situation, it can be like, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed in you, which, ooh, God, that always stings, like right in the mom and dad genes, like, oh, damn. Or
right in the heart guts.
Yeah, right in the especially if that's a character that they're connected with and they really respect. But I think that the most dangerous characters are always the quiet ones, because they're the ones who are obviously holding back something. And typically it's, I did a casting director workshop a couple of months ago, back before pre-quarantine. I did it down at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and this casting director brought in sides for everybody, and the sides that I had were for the head of the Irish mob in Boston. And I always try to, as a playwright myself, I always try to honor the stage directions. And the stage directions said that this guy was being loud and screaming and pounding the table and you know, like having a meltdown, threatening this dude who just crossed him. And it was basically like you mother, I'm gonna, you know, you better have eyes in the back of your head because that's where I'm gonna put two, and like all this other stuff, like all these great mafia threats. And I learned the scene, and I came in and I pounded the table and I made this big thing and this whole big scene. And the first thing the casting director said was, "Yeah, you literally threw all of your power away in the second your voice went to a yell." You know, and nobody, and I looked around and they're like, "Was anybody scared of him?" And they're like, not really. It's like, "Oh, okay." So he's like, "Here's what you do. Ignore the stage directions. Do it just still and quiet." And did the scene again. Gave me another take. Really nice of him. Didn't have to do that. And he said it was, at that point, everybody was like, "Oh, chills," because like you're gonna cut somebody. You know, and it's so, you know, I understand how the initial reaction for an NPC who just like who's reaming out, you know, subordinate PCs, or, you know, or the bad guy who's like taking his moment to gloat and monologue or whatever. That yelling might be the first thing that you go to, but honestly, yelling and raising your voice can be the weakest choice. So
and that could be for both dungeon masters and players.
Yeah. So
one thing, another thing I want to mention about LARP, because I did mention safety before, check-ins. This is something that I learned in LARP, where you go like, "Oh, are you okay?" And you can be like, "I'm fine," "I'm not fine," or "I'm not sure," which also is "I'm not fine." So especially if you have something that's super emotional and super stressful for the players, like for their characters, and Kristen also mentioned bleed.
Yes.
Also, a thing that can happen with LARP, it can happen in tabletop RPGs too, because you get really attached to these characters. And as you said before, Greg, it's almost like an extension of yourself, or like a best version of yourself, an ideal version of yourself. So like it's hard to separate the emotions that your character might feel versus what you're feeling. And it can be a little confusing, and it can cause actual like emotional distress for you, or, you know, extreme happiness for you. So having the check-ins, I feel like, really helps you go like, "Okay, here's me. I'm sitting here. I'm at my table. This is what's happening in this imaginary spot. Let's step back, see how that's going."
Yeah, absolutely. No,
yeah,
I think I
feel like I almost said that. Brian just said again, he's the dad friend of our group.
Saying
yelling was a bad example, but emotionally, I would say check-ins.
Yeah.
Just to be like, "Hey, are you okay? Do we need to take a break? Is that fine?" But yeah, I haven't had a moment. I don't think I've had a moment yet with the game that I'm running on Fridays where that type of check-in has been necessary. But there have been a couple of moments where, like, after game, I'm like, "How are we doing? Is everyone okay?"
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just because it's important for me that my players feel like they can have fun safely, play with each other safely, play with me safely, and that they're not going to be put in a situation where they feel icky, where they feel uncomfortable, because that's the last thing I want them to feel.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's really important that if you're going to be doing a story like that, or that could veer into that territory, that everybody goes in eyes open, you know, because it affects people. You know, the thing is that when you're playing these characters, it is your real emotions and your real feelings, and you really, when you're in it, you're really affected by what's going on. And we are in it for the buzz. We are in it for the sensation of the thrilling heroics and the tragic losses and everything else. But at the same time, like, people get really attached to these characters and they're really feeling everything. And trauma is real, and trauma can happen by accident. Like, You know, like it's important that we take care of each other emotionally. Now, the funny thing is that when I was boffer LARPing, it was 20 years ago, basically. And this was not anything in the scene. This was not anything that we ever really talked about back then. This wasn't anything that really came up. And I know that there were lots of God, what's the best way to put this? You know, I know that there were everything was always high fantasy and you know, you're always trying to have like the Lord of the Rings kind of plot lines and stuff like that. It never delved into like deeply personal, deeply character stuff unless people brought that themselves, and then they would get a GM to do that with them. It's not like the GMs were forcing people into these deep things, but a lot of characters brought stuff, and I think some people wound up swimming in deep waters before they knew it, getting dragged into other people's plot lines and not recognizing the emotional toll that can take, and that, you know, sometimes would break up friendships or things like that as a result. Like there were real life consequences to in-game things, and that you know, and we didn't have this language of check-ins and things like that, and being aware of each other's emotions in that way back then. And I'm so glad that, because I haven't LARPed in about 15 years, it's been that long. So I'm really thrilled to see that, especially when you have like these genre LARPs like World of Darkness and stuff like that, where the drama and the gothic horror of it all is the point, you know, and this these intense character interactions are the point. It's like, yeah, you really got to take care of each other emotionally.
In a system like World of Darkness or even Vampire the Masquerade, because specifically, I think of Vampire the Masquerade in particular because that is a role-playing system, and that is specifically a LARPing system where consent is an issue.
Oh God, yeah.
And oftentimes when you're like, oh, I want to play vampire, some people will go, ugh, because again, there are powers in there that basically command you to do something, to make you do something that you don't want to do, and to cooperate when you don't want to. But I'm a vampire and I have this power, so you have to do what I want to. So like
it's a power trip fantasy, and that's like, wow, you know, that can get into deep waters real quick, you know. And yeah, I remember there was one time I was LARPing and my character got mind controlled by again, this was 20 years ago. It was there was a group of Romani, I believe that, like, what is the appropriate term? I think that's the appropriate one. I don't want to use the G word.
Yeah, Romani is the appropriate term. I went over this with my students the other day.
I appreciate that, because I'm always like, because we always use the G word to describe them. It was the G camp, you know, and I'm like, now that I know that word is not okay, not kosher, I don't want to use it right now, but that was what they were. And they were playing very much the stereotype, and I was in the town militia, and they charmed me to turn the other way when they stole something. And that was, you know, like, I suffered in-game consequences for the fact that happened, you know, and that was like, that I think that was really like one of my first experiences with consent and things like that, and role-playing and consequences, and that was I felt all kinds of angry about that, because I was like, that was PvP, which was something that I was like, wait, this is a thing? Because I think that was my first full weekend event when that happened, and I was like a level 1 little, you know, like just trying to find my footing, and I was like, okay, I guess this kind of stuff just happens sometimes, you know, and it was you know, an interesting experience, and I know that and I played Vampire when I first when I was cutting my teeth in role playing, and we would always just like do massive combat, you know. We never really got into the gothic horror of my dark tragic existence, and it was always just like, okay, let's pull a monster from this thing and see how many blood soaked dice we can roll at once. And we never like, because it was like we were 12, 13, 14, like that the big role playing wasn't our thing. But I know a lot of folks who do the WOD role playing. Actually, my friend Alyssa was one of the folks who brought back the Mind's Eye Theater, and ran the Kickstarter to do the new edition of Mind's Eye Theater rules. And that book is an inch and a half thick for a reason, because they go through all kinds of important stuff on how to run a game properly. And it's like, wow, that's a good reason, or a good thing for that. Revens says, it's very hard for some people to separate real from RP, especially when they are uber invested in their characters. Yeah, I agree with that. The concern I always have is, and not specific to D&D, is that folks are unwilling to accept that roleplay has consequences for their characters. I agree wholeheartedly.
100%, yeah.
And, and that's, I also feel like that's the cause of murder hoboism. Which is like the exact opposite of role play, really, and people aren't able to acknowledge it's not a personal attack. Yeah, because I think that role playing, sometimes people role play because they don't realize that they're working out personal stuff, and that this is like their way of dealing with real life issues, and whether you know that or not about somebody, you could be walking through an emotional minefield with somebody, and
if it ruins the game, then it should be what your character would do.
But it's what my character would do. Oh yeah. Oh god.
Yeah. Well, and I know, I have a lot of people don't like using it's what my character would do as a reason for something that their character did.
Yeah.
My character,
there's a reason why it's a meme.
accidentally her name. They were like, oh, well, you can't come in here without an appointment. May I have your name? I'm like, it's Nettie, whatever. I need to go in there and help people. Cause she didn't think but that's very much what she would do, because her flaws that she's blindly trusting. Oh, a cat. Yes.
Hi, Miranda. Miranda is waiting for her brother Bailey to get back from the vet. So I'm hoping that, but she's feeling a little needy right now. So she wanted to hop up. Cat tax.
Yeah, my cats are somewhere. Yeah. I closed the office door so they wouldn't come in here and meow at me to feed them.
Yeah. Aww.
But another example, what was it? I was playing in Tomb of Annihilation, and my human barbarian La Akea, we encountered a white with who was writing stuff down, had all these hands running around, and I successfully got a hand to give me a high five. And my character instantly became very attached to this hand because, whoa, his name's Rudy, he gave me a high five, this is great. And I paid no attention to anything else that was happening because my character got hyper-focused on this hand.
Yeah.
And then when we ended up having to fight said undead creature, I was like, no, Rudy doesn't attack, does he? And my husband was like, roll an animal handling check, because I guess that works. And I rolled, and he rolled something. He was like, all the hands attack you except for Rhodey, who hides by your feet. And I was like, yes, I have a pet hand. As soon as the fight was over and we killed the white, it died. And I was like, oh no. So there's a consequence to my roleplay. I got a pet hand for 5 seconds, basically. And then Rhodey gave me attached to it in that 5 seconds before he died. Oh man.
Oh,
it was
God,
so
right in the feels.
Yeah, right in my heart guts. And poor Locke should be like, I remember when he would give me high fives. It was so cool.
And I see, hey, Susanna, good to see you, honey. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, oh God, it's so good to see you. One of my players. So, yeah.
Woo!
Yep. Awesome. So glad to have an active chat here tonight, guys. Thank you so much.
I know,
guys
it's awesome.
Adding a ton to
great.
this. So, it's so funny. We had an outline on things we wanted to cover, and we've just been telling stories. But I love this because I feel like it's a an interesting and organic conversation. But I agree. You gotta take care of it's not just the DM's responsibility to take care of players at the table. It's the players' responsibility.
I'm Trepzilla. Yeah, that's me in the chat. Don't at me, Polly.
I think it's really important that the players all take care of each other as well in terms of emotions and feelings and role play. There was a fantastic survey that I found that I sent out to my players before I started my Monday night game, Brutes in the Shackled City, and it was all about comfort levels and consent, and what can you deal with and what can't. because you know, I want to know in advance if I have a character right now who is I mean, this is no spoilers here. This is actually all already known in the game. There's an NPC who is collaborating with the bad guys under duress because they've kidnapped his nephew, and his nephew is being held hostage.
No.
Yeah, and at one point they were like, oh, the players were like, oh, they kidnapped your nephew, right? Like, where's the evidence? And he held up a little something wrapped in cloth, and I was like, there's yeah. And the thing is that I knew in advance that I was like, I know how far I can push this, you know, before people really start getting freaked out. But it was good to know that, okay, like, if I go too far with this part of the story, people are going to get upset, you know, knowing what upsets people in advance, you know. And I love that these surveys cover everything from sex to drugs to you know, player versus player combat, how to handle inter-party conflict, and, you know, also, like, but it goes into the deep end, but it also covers, like, how comfortable you're talking in funny voices, you know. And
exactly.
it gives you a broad survey of how to handle things. And as a DM, it's great because now I know where the pressure points. Oh, thank you so much, Kristen, for the shout out. I really appreciate that. I'm so glad everybody's enjoying that. We had a lot of people in the chat this past week, and that made for a really, really active and fun session, because I always let the chat award inspiration to my players when they feel like they're doing well. So lots of bonuses on rolls Monday night. So the more folks we can have, the better. But as a DM, it not only helps me to know where the no-fly zones are with my players, because I want to make sure that I want to screw with their characters. I don't want to screw with the players. Exactly. You know, there is that distinction, and there's that separation. But, and this is kind of evil of me, but it also gives me, like, the go-to, like, oh, you're okay with being thrown in a pit of snakes? Great, you're getting thrown in a pit of snakes at one point. Like, you know, it's like
that's another reason why I talk to my players about what are things you're not comfortable with. So then I'm like, okay.
Yeah, right. Like, okay. if you tell me you're okay with this, it might just happen. You know.
But also, one thing that might be good is to resend out that survey every once in a while to see if their comfort levels have changed
for ongoing campaigns. Absolutely. You know, like I knew that I knew that if I push things too hard. Oh, Arthur, yes, I will.
Yes.
You know what? I might. Let me see if I could pull it up, and I'll throw it in the chat here. But you know, I knew that some folks would be upset with the idea of child endangerment and child abuse, and I knew that I was kind of really pushing that line, implying that the kid had been attacked and lost a finger as a message, you know. But I was like, okay, there's the evidence, and everybody's like, got it. Don't need any more detail. And you just gotta. It's our responsibility as DMs and storytellers and shepherds of the story to read the room. And constantly be reading the room, and constantly be checking in, and constantly being aware of people and what's cool with them and what's not. So, you know, really, really important. I think I have this in my saved links here. Let me find my bookmarks.
So you mentioned, like, having the ability to constantly be reading the room. Now, something that I've encountered, and I know other people have encountered, is being able to play online. Not everybody's going to have a handy dandy camera to have their facial expressions. A lot of the game I run on Fridays, the game I play in on Tuesdays, not everybody has a webcam. So we just haven't been using webcams. So oftentimes, some things I've encountered is that I have to pay attention to the timbre of someone's voice.
Yeah.
To try to figure out, is this in character, or are they actually upset about something? And I'm very fortunate in the fact that I have players that if they are having an issue or something, they contact me, which is nice.
Yeah, well, that's always important to have an open dialogue with your players behind the scenes. Absolutely.
And I've been encouraging them to also, like, if you have an issue with something that somebody did, please talk to them about it. Like, don't let it stew, because playing online is difficult. Playing at a table, I can read a face and it's super easy. Yeah, exactly. The level of engagement being Revens just said, the level of engagement is a large issue as well as without a visual. So oftentimes I know, like with me, I have a million tabs open on my computer right now, like
Yeah.
while this is happening. The tabs I have mainly on right now is the Twitch, so I can see the chat, and I also have my D&D Beyond up, so I can take a look at the social interaction rules, so I could read them in junk. But
Yeah.
like, I have a hard time staying focused. I know that about myself. So like, there are little tools that I've used to try and like keep myself occupied. I take notes, and I take notes. But at the same time, you know, I'm still distracted every once in a while I'm doing this sort of thing. So, I don't know, Greg, do you have any tips or tricks for helping keep player engagement when it comes to like doing something that's social or keeping them engaged in some way?
You know,
I know we're kind of going all over the place and
it's
started
okay.
with social interactions, but even doing this and playing, that's a social interaction in and of itself.
Well, I think, yeah, and sorry, I'm actually trying to throw the link to the survey in the chat
worries.
right now, and I've sent it twice, and it doesn't seem to want to go. Oh, you know what? Probably because I'm sharing the wrong kind of link, because I have it in my Google Docs. But I am going to answer that question. I would say that as a DM, it helps to have a clear understanding and advanced planning on what the objective is of every scene. When you know that you're going to have a social interaction or social encounter, it's a good idea to know like what the objection is, or what the objective is, what the challenges are, and just have a really clear idea of who is in the scene and how do these characters feel about the people they're interacting with. Have a very clear setup for that, because I think the worst, the fastest thing that kills attention span in D&D is an indecisive GM. You know, having a GM that isn't sure of, doesn't have a crystal clear image of what's going on in their heads. You know, we are the ones who are conveying the scene, and if we're not clear on what we're getting across here and what everybody's objectives are and what they feel and how the interactions change things, I think the more locked in we are, the more locked in we are with into the scene, the more locked in our players will be. So I think that's step one, is making sure that the GMs are right there with everything. Yeah. I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna make this work. I promise. Let me.
Let's say if you want to, like, because we have the chat on Zoom. If you want to, I can try to plop it in.
Yeah. Let me. Oh, you want to know why? Because I'm looking at the administrator side. Let me see if I can actually get the. Oh,
there you go.
You know what? Let me. Send via link. Shorten URL. Copy. And my phone is networked, so it should just paste right in. Thank you so much for joining us, Polly. Really, really appreciate having you on here tonight.
Thanks, buddy.
Oh, there we go. So that's a link to the form. And if you actually Google digital RPG consent checklist, it's not posting. I'm not seeing it pop up in the chat here. You know, let me throw it in the Zoom chat to you here, Mariah. Let me see if that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Helps out. That was a little pre-show chatter right there, but here we go.
Right,
and see. I will. You know what? I'll send it to Kristen as well. I think I have it actually linked in the company teams too. But yeah, there you go. Oh, I see something coming through. It just comes through with 3 dots. That's weird. Oh, it's censored. That's weird.
That is weird.
I guess that's a security thing in certain platforms. They don't want links going out. It stops people in the chat room from spamming stuff, I guess. Well, you know what? How about this? I'm going to post a link to it on my social media, and I'll put up like a graphic or something on my Twitter and on my Facebook so people can check this out. I think it's an important resource, but it is the again, the name of it is the Digital RPG Consent Checklist, and we will I have one saved in my Google Drive, but it is available. It's linked off of Google Drive, you can save your own copy of it, but the original is publicly available. So if you just Google it, it'll come up. But where was I? We were talking about
keeping players engaged.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's totally perfect for the fact that my mind just went poof, completely blank. Yeah, I think the easiest way to keep your players engaged, honestly, is you be engaged. You set the tone. If you as the GM are distracted, if you as the GM aren't sure of what the circumstances are, then your players aren't going to be sure of it, because you're the one conveying the story. You're the one setting the scene. So if I had I have social interactions in my games that I have, very clear ideas of ahead of time. But then, sometimes your players will surprise you, and you will wind up having to improvise scenes. Like I had a player that was gone for a couple of weeks, and when she came back, she was like, "Great, I've been gone for 8 hours. What did I do during those 8 hours?" And I was like, crap. So I wound up taking the first 45 minutes just to get her reintegrated, having to run through a whole set of improvised scenes, including her interacting with the town guard, the captain of the guard, I should say, with whom she has a personal history that has yet to be disclosed to the rest of the party. Yeah, and because she grew up without parents in town. Her parents were adventurers who went on a crusade and never returned. And she kind of grew up a hooligan around town, so she's had several run-ins with the guard and stuff like that. I'm playing all this history, but I think having this social interaction that I was like, okay, I'm just going to make this up on the fly. That's why it's really important to have a really good sense of who your NPCs are and how they feel about people, because when you're put into a situation, instead of flailing, if you know who the characters are, if you know how they feel, and know in general, like, and it doesn't have to be like you have to know their entire backstory from birth until now and have detailed notes on every interaction that they ever had off camera, or out of game. You have you can have the attitude, the starting attitude. You go back to these mechanics and you just know what the starting attitude is, and give it a simple reason why. If this character is indifferent or hostile towards this character, why? And just know why that, and then it's a yes and at that point, and you just build the story, As far as I'm concerned, the two of them grew up knowing each other. One went and became captain of the guard. The other one became a miscreant hooligan, and they have this complicated history because of that. So when she comes to him looking for help, he's kind of like, no. Like, you've cried wolf one too many times for me to believe you. And that it turned out to be a really great scene. And I think that once this adventure is done, it's going to have a hell of a payoff when he finds out that she was right. And that,
and like,
yeah,
it even if you're just doing, like I mentioned, check-ins with players, even if it's just like, if you're doing a huge social scene, like if they're at a festival or something and everybody kind of splits off to do their own thing, being able to keep track of, number one, what's happening, what are the events, who are the people, etc. Are there prizes, are there games, are there plays, are there songs, is there a dance, is there an arm wrestling contest? Keeping track of all the activities that are there, what NPCs that they could run into, but also making sure that you're checking in with each player to see what exactly they're doing, because some people might pair off, some people might go off and do something on their own. So it's important
are there things to
as
steal?
a GM.
Absolutely.
Are there things to steal? Exactly.
Yeah. You can.
Is there a bad puppet show to watch? Who knows? But it's important to check in.
Yeah, you can set up a whole set of social encounters, like a fair or a ball or something else that's almost like a dungeon in itself, with its own encounters and traps and skill checks and other things. But the trap isn't like, oh my god, rocks fall, everybody dies. it's you wind up in a duel of wits with a bard who's going around roasting people, you know, and do you become the roaster or are you the roastee, you know? So that's like there's
you end up flirting with the Contessa and she's married.
Yeah, oh exactly, you know, always good to know what the consent levels are on that before you get involved too. But exactly. Yes, you know, like when you know that everybody's game for it, it's like, yeah, dude, let's make what happen. I have a bard in my party who is not the stereotypical bard, like tries to sleep with everything that moves, but we had a lot of fun the other night because she likes to try and make love connections for the other PCs and was totally thinking that one of the PCs was about to go hook up with an NPC, which is why they wanted to split off and you know, go exploring by themselves. And they haven't realized that NPC is gay and in a relationship with the other NPC yet. So that's spoilers, you know. But yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be a fun little reveal to the bard. So yeah, but you know, but I think the social encounters can really enrich a game and make for some of the most memorable things. Like everybody's going to remember that time they killed the Tarrasque, you know, or they find the +5 Holy Avenger. Like these are big things that will always make a career, you know.
Or when somebody dies in a stupid way.
Oh my God, the number of stupid character deaths. Yeah, exactly, the number of stupid character deaths. You don't ever roll a rogue with 18 dex and 3 strength. That was when I was doing AD&D. My first AD&D character was a rogue with 18 dex and 3 strength, and I fell off a cliff. Oof. And kept grabbing on, but didn't have the strength to hold on, and kept just like bumping all the way down. And that was the dumbest PC death ever, you know. Not even a monster killed me. I slipped and fell off a cliff. The DM was also a bit of a jerk, so he enjoyed that a little too much. You know, and I think that also, and this goes into a whole nother mentality of like, as a DM, you know, I know Gary Gygax kind of set this up to be like it's DM versus PCs, you know, like very much. Yeah. And he was always gotcha, rocks fall, everybody dies, you know, and it was a sense of accomplishment when you figured out his stuff, his traps and his things. And like, it was, you know, I mean,
very adversarial.
Yeah. The original Tomb of Horrors rather, is so nasty. Like when they have a false final encounter where they literally instruct you to say that when the PCs beat this encounter, close the book, stand up, say, hey guys, great game everybody, congratulations, you win, and then don't give any hints that that's not the real final encounter and the real boss is in the next room, you know, like that's terrible. Like it was a whole level of metagame that was specifically designed to make the GMs and the PCs have an adversarial relationship. I'm, as an actor and an improviser, I'm much more of the sense of like, the goal here isn't to win D&D.
It's to tell a story.
It's to tell a great story, you know?
And it's meant, the way I'm really appreciative of a lot of materials that have come out now, as well as streams, where it's not an adversarial relationship between the players and the GM. Yeah. I love seeing collaborative storytelling, and you're 100% right, Brian. It is all about the journey. Yep. And it's about making those interpersonal connections with your party members and with NPCs that you like, whether those interpersonal connections lead to like friendships or really bad choices at a tavern, or you know, you marry an NPC or another player, or an NPC like tragically dies because of like a mistake you made like forever ago that you didn't think was gonna mean anything. Like, and those types of things really
come back to bite you in the ass. Yeah,
exactly. You know? And some consequences are positive, some of them are negative.
Absolutely.
Kristen just asked another question.
Do you feel it's more story? Yeah, I've noticed some pushback about calling game masters storytellers. Do you feel it's more storytelling or facilitating, or does it need to be both or neither? That is an excellent question.
That is a very good question.
I think there's a lot of personal style, and I think it goes with. Oh, thank you, Susie. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope drive safe and hope your car's okay. And really appreciate you joining us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm of the mind that. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but Mahria, what's your take on it first?
Well, I'm definitely a planner when it comes to my game, but like when I say I'm a planner, I don't have a story written out. I have events that might happen depending on where my players go. I have people that they can interact with, and depending on what happens with them, like how they reacted to the party, how they didn't react to the party, etc., will influence what happens to them later on should those characters come back to that area. I have a grand idea of what could potentially happen, but again, it's very solely based on what my players do. And it's definitely based on how my players interact with the world. I'm running a game that takes place in Exandria, which is the Critical Role universe. It is not where the campaign is now. It's not where it was. It is smack dab in between all of those timelines. So it can be something different. And
so
I have
post
an
Vox
idea.
Machina, but pre Mighty Nine.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
So it's 10 years after Vox Machina, 10 years before Mighty Nine. It's that sweet spot.
Nice.
But I think the current one takes place 20 or 30 years after.
Later. Yeah, I think so.
But I have ideas for things that can be interconnected, but up to my players need to try to figure out what those connections are. They have some idea of things that are happening in the world. I don't want to give away too much because I know a bunch of them are on right now, so I don't want to give anything away for what I have planned.
Spoiler alert.
Exactly. # spoiler alert. But it all depends. I don't want it to be, this is my story. They just happen to be characters in it. This is how it's going to inevitably go.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what their choices were. This is my story. This is what's happening.
They're not railroading. You might as well write a book at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. And what's the point of doing that? So I want to tell a story with my players rather than tell it to them. Yes. Because if that was what they wanted, I would just write them a book. And I like being able to have a story that is organically changing and shifting and growing with those players, because as the dungeon master, I get to play all these different people and all these horrible bad guys and all these interesting creatures and describe these cool landscapes. And I get to do that for my players, and then I get to see how they interact with it and see how they can impact it and how they can change it. And that's one of the things I really, really enjoy about a game like Dungeons and Dragons, where I have that ability to see what my players do with the information that I have for them, because even I don't have every single thing that they're going to encounter. I have a lot.
For sure.
I have a lot, probably way too much that I need.
Yeah.
But I don't have absolutely everything figured out, and I will get ideas from the things that they do. I will get ideas from the way they interact with people. Like, they interacted with a really crappy marquee in Phelan. They because it's run by all these different marquises and stuff, and they had this really awful social encounter with him where it was just terrible, and I instantly went, oh no, this is so bad. But they handled it so perfectly, and they got to rub his face in the fact that they succeeded when he said that they couldn't, and it made my day. It made me so happy.
It gives stakes, you know. He's on the list. He's gonna die. Yeah,
he's gonna die eventually.
I love it.
We'll see.
We'll
see.
That's some brazenness like there. I like that.
I like that.
I think, you know, and I agree with you completely. Number one, I agree with you completely. I think that I can understand why there's backlash against the idea of DMs being called storytellers, because it implies that the players have no agency. Exactly. You know, and that railroading is what happens. Like, you're going to sit here and listen to me tell my epic tale, and I'll let you fill in the funny voices, you know, and I understand that. I say storyteller, and when I say that, I do mean facilitator. You know, like, I am the person who is creating this world and fleshing it out for you, so we can tell our story together, you know? So I understand that if somebody is storytelling in a way that is not conducive to player agency or player contributions, then yeah, that's valid criticism. But I think that if people, it depends on what the word means to them and how they actually do it. Because if you're if you're facilitating, I don't see anything wrong with saying that you're the storyteller. But yeah, it's but yeah, as dungeon masters, that is our job, is to facilitate, to give people the opportunity to tell this amazing story. Because here's the thing: when you were talking about rubbing the thing that your party did, that now they can rub their face in the guy's, or the guy's face in their success. That
he
just
had
makes
to make
it,
them the guest of honor
Yeah.
at the festival, at the wine festival that they saved. They saved the
mother
wine
effing
festival.
Catalina wine mixer.
Basically.
There you go. I love it. But you know, that's what makes it sweeter. That's what makes it memorable. You know, like it having stakes, having challenges, having as a playwright, I first off, as a writer, don't ever look at my internet search history, because, oh dear God,
Yeah, please don't look at my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the same goes for dungeon masters, like good dungeon masters who create things. Don't ever look at our internet search histories, because I'm sure that I'm on a watch list somewhere, especially also producing theater and having to buy gallons of fake blood and tons of camo netting and all these other. It's
I
like
LARP.
yeah,
LARP
exactly.
And I cosplay so
the stuff
much
that we
questionable
have to
things.
do, just it would, out of context, it makes us look very questionable. But I think we have to create situations where our characters, and the thing is, whether I'm writing a play or I'm being a dungeon master, I think there's a similarity here in the responsibility of the storytelling to establish stakes. And sometimes that means doing things that to your characters that's going to suck for them. Like, you have to put them through the crucible. And like in some cases that's the dungeon with the rocks and everything else, but sometimes that's the social interactions and having to deal with like courtly intrigue and things like that. And it's rough to see your characters stumble. It's rough to see them put in tough situations and maybe not excel, but it makes the eventual success all that much sweeter. There's a reason why I think that Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars film out of all of them by like a lot. As a kid, I loved Return of the Jedi because I thought the Ewoks were cute. But once I actually like started, and why I also think The Last Jedi is hot take here. Flame me in the comments if you want, but I still think The Last Jedi is like the second best out of all of them. But it's because. And I kind of loved watching this. All the hate over the bad guys winning, and all the hate over the bad guys winning. And I'm like, or Infinity War, when that happened and the snap, like if I'm spoiling Infinity War for you, don't at me. Don't at us. It's on Disney Plus. Like, you have no excuse.
What was the line? It was Clerks.
Yeah.
It was What should you like better, Empire, Jedi, or Empire Strikes Back? Empire. Blasphemy. Yeah. Look, Empire, the better ending. Luke gets his hand cut off, finds out Vader's his father. Han gets frozen, taken away by Boba Fett, and ends on such a down note. And that's what life is, a series of down endings. All Jedi had was a bunch of Muppets.
Oh, God.
I don't know why I have that memorized.
But God bless you, because that, yes. But the thing is that you need to make your characters suffer in order for them to grow. And I do this. I wrote a play about.
It makes that growth so much better.
Oh God, it makes it so much better, because having real adversity and real stakes and real challenges makes the eventual success so much sweeter, so much more meaningful. I think that, but that's a very fine line you have to walk, and that's where things like the consent surveys and things come in, because you want to be able to challenge your PCs, you want to be able to set up difficult situations, you want to be able to facilitate emotional and character growth, but without traumatizing the player, without hurting the player. Like, that is our responsibility, and I think that's why like something like the consent survey is really important, and also really well thought out, well planned, well run social encounters really help raise those stakes and make things better. Because if completing the dungeon, surviving the dungeon is one thing, but if by surviving the dungeon you're showing up your arch rival, dude, that's just the sauce. That's just the sauce right there. Yeah, exactly.
So
it's like,
delicious.
it's like I want it to be like barbecue. Just get it all over my hands and face. Like, let's do this. Like, yeah.
Don't at me, Robbie.
Oh, yeah. But I think that I appreciate it when writers and when dungeon masters create really good challenges and high stakes that force character development and character growth, and really facilitate that. And sometimes the dungeon masters don't have to. Sometimes the players do it all themselves, and you're just like, yes, let it go. I think the most memorable role playing encounter I ever had was a PC romance in a game that I played in college, and it was so awful because it was all will they, won't they, and we finally got together like in the second to last session, and the last session was a TPK, and it was like tragic.
Oh my god!
Yeah, we got
terrible.
We got hit with a meteor shower in a battle because some rogue, one of the bad guy rogues the DM was like, oh, you had the opportunity to take the scroll away from them because it was for sale someplace, and then the BBEG shows up with it in the last encounter, and we're like, okay, what the hell's that? It was not a great designed encounter, but the bad guy was a rogue that succeeded his use magic device check and meteor showered us in a closed room.
Oh, use magic device.
Oh god, it was so broken. 3035 was so broken. But we had this PC romance that had been going from like a serious rivalry in the beginning to grudging mutual respect to creeping closer and closer together to finally having like that first kiss, all in game because we were both with other people at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was no LARPing of that.
No. Oh god, yeah. Talk about bleed.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
Jesus.
And Viv, the player, still remains a good friend to this day. And actually her husband Blake likes to watch Brutes in the Shackled City on Monday nights because he's DM'd the campaign before, and he and I have commiserated quite a lot. But yeah,
nice.
But we had this amazing player romance that had like everybody on the edges of their seats when we finally had this role play conversation of, okay, what is this? And it was so good. It was so amazing, so juicy. And yeah, and then we all died tragically the next session, and it was brutal. And then she emailed me after the game was over, and she's like, "Okay, so Quinn and Mira got lucky before that. We had one night of passion before every." And I was okay,
they got the one.
Cool. We got that. All right, that's good. That was like all off camera, but she was like, "Okay, that'll be."
I played.
Hey, Rubio. Yeah. Oh, actually, my friend Steve here, who's in the Facebook chat, was in that campaign with me.
Oh, fun!
Yeah. Oh my God. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you so much for joining tonight.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and honestly, the best thing that Paco, our DM, did was just let us do that. That was his thing. He was just like, okay, everybody's engaged. This is really great drama. Everybody's bringing it. Everybody's like invested in this. And sometimes the best thing you could do as a GM to facilitate the story is just get the hell out of the way.
Just let it happen. Well, The first group I didn't start playing D&D until after college.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so it took me a while. I had friends who played, and I wanted to play, but I had an experience in high school where I asked, "Oh, would it be okay if I played?" And all but two of the guys went, "No, you can't play with us. We're a girl." Anyway, I ended up playing after college, and we were all really great friends while college was happening. When we graduated, a couple of them stayed in the town where we went to school. The rest of us moved to Albany, New York. This was in New York, and we would go every Saturday, and we would just spend the entire day just chilling out. We'd play games. We'd play until the wee hours of the morning. We'd fall asleep, have a slumber party, and then go home the next day. And nice. I recall this so perfectly because we were level 1. I made a half-elf rogue. My friend Brian Quick made a human wizard. My boyfriend at the time, now husband, made a swashbuckler because that was a class. Nice. Let's see. Our friend Tanner made a cleric, and our friend Jen, his fiance at the time, now wife, made an elf barbarian because elves in this universe were like scary, brutal guys.
Oh, I dig
But we were fighting goblins, and the cleric was down. So that was bad. The barbarian was trying to just do a medicine check to just stabilize him.
No, medicine
The
checks.
swashbuckler went off to try to find, some hostages. I had 1 hit point left. Our wizard, my friend Brian, had no spells left. He had a crossbow, just shot the last bolt, and there was one goblin inching closer to us. And like my character's sitting there injured, like, oh God, I'm going to die. And the wizard just turns around and goes, "For the record, I think you're pretty." And she's like, "What?" And he beat the goblin to death with a crossbow because he rolled a natural 20 on this attack. It was the most epic thing that the wizard went to shoot his shot right before killing a goblin. It worked. My character was like, "What?" It was great. It was so amazing. That. And I love telling that story. That's because I remember that story. Yeah. It was incredibly memorable. And it was just our characters just interacting with each other.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have that if you had a storytelling DM that was just railroading people,
Exactly.
I sometimes when I'm up late at night, because I'm a night owl by nature, like sometimes Kristen will message me at 8 a.m. East Coast time, and I will be responding in real time on Teams because I'm still awake, because that's just how I roll. But sometimes I will sit and listen to the RPG cringe stories on Reddit, because people will post them to YouTube, and yeah, those games are not fun. That's the first thing I always realize about them, is that those games are not fun at all. And, so as a GM, it's our job to facilitate a good story with the players, and it is a collaborative effort. Everybody's got to have room to do their thing. I felt I had a moment where this past Monday, and sometimes I get into the dramatics and everything. I had this moment where one of my characters was like, "Okay, I'm going to go into the room and do this." I'm like, "Awesome!" And I rolled the check because there was a hidden check that they had to make, and I was like, "Okay, so here's what happens." And I kind of went into like this 30-second to a minute description of, because he was polymorphed into a badger, or no, he was wild shaped into a badger, and he's like, "I'm going to go in and sniff around the room," and he found this big, gigantic, life-size stuffed wolf in the room, because they were raiding a little underground gnomish city, and they'd found the theater in the city, and they found the props closet, and there was a giant stuffed wolf in the props closet. And I kind of went into this description about how he did it in badger form, and went in and described what happened, because I was setting up a honey badger don't give a joke. And at the end of it, he was like, "Wow, I wish you'd kind of like let me play that out." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like sometimes I, got a little carried away there. It's like, I got to remember that, the player agency is important, making sure that they're the ones feeling they're contributing, and not somebody else's, that I'm not making choices for them, So I think that, so it's a fine balance. And you're not always going to get it right, but I think the thing, but that's where trust and just knowing people and assuming best intention is always important in these games, but also recognizing when something is not working. Like I read these RPG horror stories, and it always ends with, "And then I left to find a new group," and I'm like, yeah, sometimes you got to do that, because there are DMs who don't recognize that that this is a collaborative game, and that these games are meant to be collaborative and meant to be a shared experience. And honestly, ultimately, I think if we want to circle it all the way back to the original topic here of social encounters, if you have a table that's role playing really well, you could run social encounters all day long and never drop a die. I think these rules here are here to help facilitate specific things for folks who may not be comfortable playing a character and assuming a role and donning the mantle of this character, where they're not going to connect with it more than just stats on a sheet, which is perfectly fine. That is a perfectly valid way to play these games. I don't ever want to criticize somebody. I mean, I've been an actor for 30 years, so I'm like, yes, I want to come up with a voice, and I want to come up with a like a body position and all these other things, but that's not for everybody. So the idea that they have things like this whole system, the whole social interaction system, in the DMG, is to help make sure that social encounters can be resolved in a way that makes sense for folks who aren't comfortable role playing. But there's other ways there are other ways that you can use these too. Like you had this awesome thing that you mentioned, and we're already half an hour over time, but I do want to just touch on a couple of points real quick, because this has been a fantastic time and I'm loving every second of this. But I do know
this has been awesome.
We should wrap it up at one point. But you mentioned this, and I thought this was a fantastic idea of, very much from like the yes and of improv. Rolling, a lot of people will be like, a lot of DMs, and I've done this too, be like, okay, what do you say? Awesome. All right. Yeah. And somebody can give this incredibly great speech or whatever, and it's like, okay, great, roll the dice. And then the dice let them down terribly, and it ruins a dramatic moment. What you'd mentioned was rolling the check first, and then using the check to determine, to influence how you play it. Like, it kind of gives you like the, okay, you rolled a 2, so you're
background.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so you rolled a 2. So try to convince them, but really screw it up, and that to me is like a lot of fun. That's a really, really interesting and fascinating way to take that, where, that because going in that, okay, I need, like, it enriches that is a way to enrich the story with randomness.
And not everybody's going to be comfortable doing that, and that was something that I forget where I did that, but I think it was when I first started playing D&D, and I made a bard, and I was like, I just want her to be here. She's here for a good time, not a long time. She was that kind of bard. But I was still getting used to, okay, well, I'm literally making this up as I go. I rolled the die, and I was like, okay, that's good. What is something good I can say? And then it helped kind of ease me into being able to just come up with stuff on the fly in a D&D rather than in a short form or long form.
It can give you a parameter, a touchstone to go off of.
Exactly.
And it's a prompt. It's like one of these, like, explain your favorite movie but badly, or something like that, where
exactly.
it just gives you like the, okay, now that I have that parameter set, now I know, like, the pressure is off, because you don't have that indecision lockup,
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think that there are plenty of resources out here that I have found, and we didn't get through any of them.
I know.
But I will post a bunch of these links.
We had a plan.
But
notes.
this was fantastic. Like, I've really enjoyed talking about all this stuff.
This was a blast.
Yeah. But there's lots of resources out there. If you Google D&D social encounters, you will find all kinds of good stuff. Like, there's an article on D&D Duet. There's a social interaction chart that I found linked off of Reddit that's on Google Drive. So this is just like the DM's guide, all broken down into one chart, because it all goes with their attitudes, the NPC attitudes. And you could start with hostile, indifferent, friendly, and what the DCs of the checks would be and what they will do for you. And I think that just having a handy visual having a handy visual reference right here is just a great quick way to be able to run this stuff. But then you could also grab stuff from other game systems. This is an article from Bell of Lost Souls, by the way, which is also a fantastic D&D blog, but they're just ideas on how to level up your social encounters. But one of the coolest things was playing in the Stargate playtest that we had last week.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
They have a whole system for social encounters and a social initiative role called Moxie. That's your social skill based, like your best social skill, whether it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. It's a D20 system game, and that Moxie was like, okay, we had a whole encounter where we had to convince a town to be like, okay, you guys need to get out you guys all need to leave for 24 hours so we can confront the raiders that are coming and threatening you guys. And we had to have this town meeting where we convinced everybody. It was a social skill challenge, and we actually rolled Moxie Initiative to determine who talked in what order. And I thought that that was a fantastic way to do things, because just arbitrarily saying, okay, initiative's decided by dexterity. Like, if it's social encounters, how does dexterity help? You know? So having it be based on your charisma or your wisdom, you know, that I thought was a really awesome way to do it. And it's just social encounter initiative.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Moxie was great. And then
that's really neat.
Yeah, and then they had determination points that you could wager, that if you lost if you were really and it came in handy, because we had a point where one of the guys blew their social check during that skill challenge of this town hall. They blew their social check, and I was like, oh wait, you could use a determination point. You can wager a determination point. I think everybody got one, and you could wager it to get a reroll. And if you failed again, then you lost the determination point. If you succeeded on the new roll, you actually got to keep it and reuse it. So, and the playback for that game, by the way, is on Twitch, here on the Twitch channel. And I'm going to get in there at one point very soon and clip some highlights from it, because we had a great time. I'll probably clip the whole town hall scene, because it was a fantastic set of social interactions, talking exactly what we're talking about. And they talk, like this article right here on Tribality talks about running it kind of like combat. And that's a quick, organized way to make it simpler, you know, and give it order, and give ways for reactions. And thank you so much. People are saying great chemistry in that game between the players and the GM. Yeah, Rob ran an outstanding game, and I will also say that we forced him into that town hall scene. That was not written in the module at all. We completely improvised that, and he ran it for us on the fly, and it was so smooth.
When my players make me do things that are in a module. I'm like, oh, okay, I love it. Yeah, no,
we took him completely off script, and we never knew it. That's always the best. We knew that we were running a playtest module from like Gen Con or something like that. That's what he was playing for us. We had no idea that we had completely taken a left turn, and that he was just making it up on the fly for us. But he did a fantastic job running that, and had a clear grasp of the social rules. And as a result, we got a bunch of advantages during the final battle, because we did so well in that, you know, and that the rolls that we made during that encounter set a whole bunch of other things in motion, you know, because we rolled well. So yeah, I'd recommend checking that out. Checking out that stream. I'm gonna grab the video and upload it to my YouTube channel too, so I know that we'll get it on the Mastermind YouTube channel. And like I said, I'm gonna clip some highlights that people can check out. But yeah, I thought that was a really fun way to show how social interactions in a game can really enrich the story. And
that's really cool. And I think I'm gonna steal that for my games. If they're doing something social, have them roll a charisma check as their initiative modifier.
Yeah.
I think that's a smart idea.
Yep. And
that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, and I think it was just D20 plus your best mental stat. You know?
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I thought I was fascinated by it, and I thought that was just an awesome way to go about doing things, because it gave a sense of organization and order, and it made sure that everybody got their moment. You know?
I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down in my Exandria book.
Ooh, there you go.
So my players, I'm writing this down.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, like I said, we've been going for 35 minutes longer than we were gonna. I could talk all night about this, and Mariah, I love chatting with you, and thank you, everybody. I know,
this is so much fun.
Yeah. Yes, it does keep charisma from being the dump stat. You know, although it's funny you mentioned that Revens, because I.
Oh, it's Ravens.
Ravens. Pardon me.
He said I mentioned it's Ravens.
Yeah. I have so many charisma-based characters, even when I'm doing pre-gens for people, that strength tends to be the dump stat, and they're all rapier wielders. But yeah, no, it really does actually give use and meaning, and it's a great framework within which to use the social skills effectively.
And even playing a character who's dump stat, like my character on Tuesdays, I specifically did that because I wanted to play a socially awkward character. So I did that on purpose, even though clerics are supposed to be good at charisma. So yeah. Having charisma being the dump stat, it can be to a benefit.
Absolutely. Well, you know, and that's the thing, is that these, even if you have a negative modifier, it's just character building in the sense of, like, it's one of those yes and parameters. Like, okay, I'm a socially awkward character. Yeah, you know, I look at it as flavor and seasoning, you know, not like, oh, my character is gimped. It's like, no, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, awesome. All right. Well, I think, yeah. Mariah, thank you so much for taking the time with me tonight.
Thank you. This has been so much fun. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
And thank you everybody in the chat for joining us tonight. So good seeing some familiar names for both of us. So, this was awesome.
Happy. Yeah, it makes me very happy to see my friends are watching and paying attention. That's really cool.
Absolutely. Well, and hey, folks, if you're looking for a GM to run a game for you, both Mahria and I are available. We are GMs for hire with Mastermind Adventures. You can find us at mastermindadventures.com. Please check us out on there.
It looks like Kristen just linked our bios and stuff, as well as what games we're running. I know I have 3 games, all one-shots that folks can sign up for. They're pretty fun.
Tell them about Quinn's very first attack of the campaign sometime. Thanks, Rubio. Was that the one that I critically failed and impaled myself with my Wolverine claws? Yeah, I had a ranger that was dual wielding Wolverine style, you know, bladed gauntlets, and that went very poorly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, yeah. And please join us again in 2 weeks. I'm going to be on here with Arthur, one of our other GMs, and we're going to invite a couple of other GMs to join us to have an even bigger discussion about the concept of no more evil races in D&D and no more inherently evil races and what that means in terms of.
Happy. I'm definitely tuning into that one.
Yeah, I think that, and yeah, please join us in the chat because I think that's going to be a really interesting and robust discussion. We're going to go into the history and the context of some of these things and some of the stereotypes and. You know, why it's important that because I know that there's been a lot of reactions across a very wide spectrum to this concept, you know, and I think that we need to talk about why it's important that this distinction is made, not just from a gaming perspective, but from a social perspective, you know, and the importance of all that. So that's going to be 2 weeks from today. And yeah, we will, and please, join me Monday nights on my stream, with Brutes in the Shackle City running at 7 p.m. Pacific. So, a little late for the East Coasters, but you can always catch the recap, the replays here on Twitch or on YouTube, or we post the highlights and clips around like all over the place. So, yeah, thank you again for joining us. Mahria, thank you.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Do you have any? You said that you're going to be streaming soon on Fridays.
It depends on the consent of my players.
Got it.
So I asked them if everybody's down with it. Then yeah, it would be every other Friday at 7 Pacific, Eastern Standard Time. Sorry, not Pacific.
Awesome. I was like, oh wow, you're keeping my hours now.
No, I'm not. No, I mean I am, but I can't sleep. It's fine.
Yeah. Awesome. Alrighty, y'all. All right. Well, thank you again, and roll them 20s.
Yay!
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.